Hello everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Replay of the Week. Sorry if I sound a little tired or under the weather, because, I'm both of them, but I wanted to get this out, so we're going to jump right into the latest replays. So today we're going to look at a battle between Abrandt and Otto, two of my favorite battlers in Ark. This is a title match for the #1 contender, so it is a best 2 out of 3. Hold on, let me switch this here just so that it looks... Is that right now? Yeah, that's right. Just so that the types are correct based on the person. Okay, so we have two of my favorite battlers, Otto, Abrandt. Best 2 out of 3 match for #1 contender. So the winner of this will be facing Venge in a world title match. Otto, we see, has the dark grass and water types for Ubers, which is the tier that they're playing in, and Abrandt has the ground, normal, and psychic. We see Otto with a Slowbro, Yveltal, Arceus isn't revealed the type, but it has to be obviously the dark grass or water. All three are viable types for Arceus. And then the Kyogre, Shaman Sky, and Hydreigon. We can assume that, of course, the Kyogre is primal. And then the Slowbro, we can also assume, although it doesn't have to be, that it is in fact a Mega, just because he doesn't have anything else on his team that can Mega. For Abrandt's side, we have the Groudon, presumably again primal, the Tapu Lele, and the Deoxys Attack, a classic Psychic Terrain combo for Ubers. And then he has the Zygarde, Chansey, and Mewtwo, another powerful option for Psychic Terrain. We can assume again that the Mewtwo is in fact his Mega. The Zygarde, of course, is going to be Zygarde Complete, and then, like I said, the Groudon is Primal. So I believe that's all. We can just go ahead and get right into this with the battle. So we see, let me switch to slow. The Tapu Lele versus Shaman Sky lead. He is going to go right out into his... Abrandt's going to go right out into his Chansey to pretty much wall anything that the Shaman Sky wants to do, as Otto goes out into his Yveltal on the Stealth Rocks that Abrandt sets up, as he doubles out into his Zygarde to take whatever this Yveltal wants to go for. He does decide to go for the knockoff, revealing that it is a physical set on the Yveltal. They do sometimes run, obviously, Dark Pulse, Oblivion Wing, so it is the physical set, knocks off the Zygarde's leftovers, which is unfortunate, but we're gonna see Otto switch out into his Slowbro and to get toxicked by the Zygarde. Of course, you know, depending on the set, a lot of times it does run Toxic. As we see, he does go for the substitute, so it is a sub-Toxic variant. Of course, with the leftovers gone, that does make it a little bit more difficult for him to do that set, but as Otto does go for the Toxic, it does help him out a little bit there, because he does avoid that Toxic. And then he's going to start taking that damage, obviously. As the Zygarde does get below 50%, we are going to see the complete form activate, which is going to heal him back up to 58, and he is behind the substitute now. So we're going to see Otto decide to double out into his Arceus, and it does reveal that it is in fact a grass Arceus. Definitely a good option to counteract ground types outside of like Primal Groudon, obviously, because it can carry the Fire Punch, and it probably is considering Otto's grass type as one of his specialties. So we see the Abrandt go for the 1,000 Arrows here, as Otto reveals the Ice Beam, and it is fast, obviously. Abrandt's probably a more bulky set anyways, and it is base 120, but so we don't really know exactly what kind of set it is, but it is faster than the Zygarde with the Ice Beam to hit it for double super effective, as Abrandt does go for the Toxic here to wear down the Zygarde, or the RCS, as Abrandt decides to go right out into his Tapu Lele on the Stealth Rocks. So definitely a support, maybe a support offensive. Well, I already know what it is. It is support offensive. RCS, I already know I got a pace spin from both battlers of the teams, so I do know what everything is, and it is a offensive support RCS. I won't obviously reveal what things are until they're shown, but afterwards I just like to have that information so that I can run calcs and stuff and kind of talk about the sets while knowing exactly what they are. So does go for the Stealth Rock. The poison damage is racking up. He decides to go for the Ice Beam on the Tapu Lele to get some chip off, as the Tapu Lele goes for the Moonblast, and then it's going to drop to the Toxic there. The Otto decides to go out into his Hydreigon here. He could be Scarf Hydreigon, which would be faster than Tapu Lele. I think if they're both Scarfed, but I'm not 100% sure about that. They both. No, Tapu Lele is 95, Hydreigon's 98, so the Hydreigon would be faster if it is Scarf. Or he may have calced the Lele to see what item it is. It could also be Terrain Extender, which would make sense on a team that does have 3 Psychic types. So he's going to scare out the Chansey, or the Lele, and out into the Chansey, as Otto decides to go for the Black Hole Eclipse on his Hydreigon, revealing it to be the Z move Hydreigon. It doesn't do a ton to the Chansey, of course, Chansey being the special wall that it is, as Otto decides to double out into his Yveltal. Chansey's probably going to go for a Wish here, which it does, and we're going to see the switch out into Zygarde here, and Otto decides to go for the knockoff, and then the Wish is going to heal the Zygarde back up almost to full here. Otto decides to go right out into his Shaman Sky, which is going to get Toxicked. Obviously, he was trying to avoid his Yveltal getting Toxicked, I assume, as the Zygarde reveals Protect, so it is a Toxic, Protect, sub Zygarde, as Otto reveals Heal Bell on his Shaman Sky, which is good because it gets the Toxic off of the Slowbro and, of course, itself, which will help him avoid getting worn down by the Zygarde. So a good turn for Otto there, as he's going to double out into his Primal Kyogre here, as the Zygarde is going to go right for another Toxic, really trying to stall out what Otto can do. Otto decides to double again out into his Shaman Sky, taking another 25%, as Abrandt decides to switch out into his Chansey on the, what's it called? Well, it was the Kyogre, but Otto is going to go for the flinches here with the Air Slash. We know it's 60% because of Serene Grace. He gets 2. Is he going to get the 3rd? And no, he does not. So the Chansey is going to be able to survive here or switch out, which is what he decides to do. So the Chansey will die on switch in. Mewtwo's going to take 38%, but obviously it's just going to get healed right back up with the Wish. As Otto decides to double out into his Hydreigon, which is going to drop to Ice Beam from the Mewtwo. So Mewtwo's at full HP here because of the Wish. Otto goes out into his Yveltal, as it does pressure the Dark type, as Abrandt is able to just sack his Chansey off there. And we see the Yveltal go for a Roost. So very good play by Otto there, getting his Yveltal up to full. Abrandt decides to go out into his Primal Groudon and to set up a Rock Polish, which is smart that he didn't go for the Swords Dance, because he would have dropped to the foul play there that Yveltal reveals, as Groudon goes for the Fire Punch, odd revealing that that is his second move, Precipice Blades, Fire Punch, Rock Polish, and then the last move could either be Sword Stance or the other option would really be a Rock type move, but the Rock type move would have probably been used against the Yveltal there if he had it. So we can assume that it was Sword Stance in the last slot there. So the Primal Groudon goes down to the Yveltal. Yveltals are on 50%. Abrandt's able to go out into his Zygarde here, not really fearing much from it because it's already knocked and the Foul Play doesn't do a lot, so he can just spam 1,000 arrows here. Of course, the Yveltal can Roost Stall, but he will just end up getting Toxiced. Otto kind of predicts the Toxic this turn and goes out into his Primal Kyogre, which of course is already Toxiced, so doesn't really lose much there. As he's able to get that in now, and with the Chansey gone, he can easily just click any move really. Decides to go for the Ice Beam as it is double super effective against his Zygarde, but of course Abrandt does go out into his Tapu Lele. And Otto decides to sack his Yveltal here to the Moonblast from the Tapu Lele. It was only at 7% after the rocks anyways, and Otto goes out into his Shaman Sky here. As Abrandt doubles out into his Zygarde, Otto decides to go for Air Slash, and he's just going to keep going for it, trying to get those flinches off on the Zygarde. Gets one. If he gets two here, he kills the Zygarde, and does he get it? No, he does not, and the Shaman Sky is going to drop to the 1,000 arrows. Otto has two Pokemon left, the Slowbro, which we saw at the beginning get Toxic, and that's pretty much all it did. As we see it come back out here again, and we do see that Otto reveals the Mega Evolution on the Slowbro. Of course, it's going to get Toxic by the Zygarde as it drops to the Scald from the Slowbro. And now we're seeing a 3 Psychic versus Slowbro here. Abrandt does send out his Tapu Lele first to get that Psychic Terrain up, and of course the Moonblast does pretty big damage from the Tapu Lele. Looks to be Specs, probably, but I have the team, but you know. Abrandt decides to go out into his Mewtwo on the Slowbro, just kill it with a Side Strike, only 13% remaining, pretty much anything would have killed it at that point. And then Otto is going to send out his Poisoned Primal Kyogre, only at 38%, and the Side Strike is going to knock it out from there in the Psychic Terrain. So Abrandt takes game number 1. So Abrandt needs to win 1 more, Otto needs to win 2 to take the set. So we are going to move right into set number 2 here. Let me play and switch. Oh, hold on. Let's refresh this. Play music off, switch sides. Okay, so we have the sides set up correctly now. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. Good luck, have fun. Game number 2. Otto decides to lead his Yveltal this time against Abrandt's Chansey. He gets knocked off right away. I don't really know what Abrandt was doing. Maybe he thought he would just switch out. I don't really know. But maybe he just wanted rocks up, and that's all he really cared about, because Otto did never reveal Defog or any sort of removal the first game, so maybe Abrandt was just thinking, you know, get the rocks up and let me sacrifice my Chansey, essentially. Otto does go for the knockoff and knock it off, and then goes for the knockoff again to just get the damage off. One more will kill, but he does decide to double out into his Primal Groudon on the knockoff. Obviously, not having an item that can be knocked off, so the damage isn't great. Otto goes into a Slowbro to wall the Pidon, but Abrandt decides to double out into his Zygarde without actually going for anything. And then just Toxics the Slowbro here, and the Slowbro Toxics the Zygarde, so they just trade Toxics here. Only difference is Otto has Heal Bell and Abrandt doesn't, so that Zygarde is going to be Toxic for the rest of the game. Abrandt withdrew the Zygarde into Chansey, Otto withdrew Slowbro into Arceus, and then Otto just decides to double again into his Hydreigon on the Chansey. Chansey goes for Wish here, and then switches out into his Zygarde as Otto reveals Defog on the Hydreigon. So if Abrandt's plan was just set up the rocks, sack the or get rid of Chansey's Eviolite just to keep him up, that didn't work because he does reveal the Defog on the Hydreigon. So Zygarde is going to be at full here because of the Wish, but it's still toxic, so still not a great situation for Abrandt. And of course the Hydreigon is Dragon type, probably faster than the Zygarde, so bad situation for him anyways, as he decides to go back out into his Chansey on the Black Hole Eclipse and sacks the Chansey. Of course it's going to kill without the Eviolite. As Abrandt decides to go out into his Deoxys attack, which we didn't get to see last game, we can assume that there's Ice Beam, Superpower, any combination, even Dazzling Gleam, I think, any combination of moves really on this Deoxys. He does reveal it to be Superpower, as Otto just decides to sack his Hydreigon now that he's expended his Z move, and he already defogged away the rocks and got rid of the rock setter, so he didn't really need that anymore. Didn't want to risk switching out into something and Abrandt reading it and going for that move, so he just decides to sack the Hydreigon. Otto goes out into his Shaman Sky here. From that you can assume the Shaman Sky is Scarf. It is Scarf, but Abrandt can easily assume that because the Deoxys naturally outspeeds, and an Ice Beam would obviously drop the Shaman Sky, so he wouldn't have gone out into it knowing that that could happen unless he was Scarf or bluffing, but he is Scarf, so he just goes right for the Air Slash here, or Seed Flare right here. Hits a Mewtwo, does lower its Spit Off, not that it really matters because another one will kill anyways, but that's what he goes for. Abrandt doesn't really have a good switch in here, but Otto decides to switch out, which I'm not really sure why he did, because unless he was just afraid of missing the Mewtwo, he is faster than the Mewtwo. I think even if the Mewtwo is Scarfed, I think I'm not 100% sure about that, but Mewtwo decides to, or Otto decides to switch out into the Primal Ogre, as Mewtwo goes for the Ice Beam there and freezes the Primal Kyogre with the Ice Beam, and Abrandt decides to double out into the Lele. Obviously, Otto does not have Scald on his Kyogre, otherwise I assume he would be going for it right now to thaw out, but he is going to get hit by a Psychic for 55% and then switch out into his Yveltal and take the Psychic by the Lele, so he has a free Yveltal in, and then he doubles out into his Shaman Sky to take the Moonblast that Abrandt was obviously going to go for. He was not locked into anything there because he is not choiced, and the Moonblast obviously would kill the Yveltal, so Otto goes out into his Shaman Sky knowing he can take it, and then goes for the Aromatherapy, cures the poison and the freeze on everything, but is forced to switch out because he is Scarf into his Primal Kyogre, as Abrandt decides to go back out into his Lele. Lele, of course, being faster, naturally outspeeds and drops the Primal Kyogre. As that's why I'm having such a hard time. I didn't put it on slow. Otto decides to go back out into Shaman Sky. Abrandt is in with his Primal Groudon now, as he's just going to get Air Slash for 43, and then Air Slashed again to get knocked out. So obviously no chance for flinches there, as it just killed into his anyways. So I'm going to say, without calcing, Scarf Mewtwo obviously must be faster than Scarf Shaman because he's staying in with, or keeps switching into it. Oh, no, let me check the team real quick, because, it is Troy Scarf. Okay, that's what I thought. So it is Troy Scarf, and so obviously is faster than the SMence guy. That's why he keeps going into it. So he decides to double out of his Mewtwo here, and see, there you go right there, and then the Mewtwo doubled first before the Shaman, therefore the Mewtwo is faster. He decides to double out into a Zygarde, predicting the switch, but he goes out into a Slowbro, so not really that good of a prediction anyways. As the Zygarde goes for Toxic on the Slowbro. So a Toxic Zygarde against a Toxic Slowbro. Abrandt decides to double out into his Lele, as the Lele also gets Toxic. So good prediction by Otto there, going for a second Toxic. As it gets Moonblasted by the Lele, the special attack drops as he goes for the Scald. Didn't really matter that much, only gonna do like 30-ish% anyways, even if he didn't get the drop, and then he just drops to another Psychic anyways. So it's Lele, basically the same thing we had last game except with a Zygarde against Shaman, but Shaman is looking in a pretty good situation here. Because of that Spidef drop, Zygarde's going to transform, but because of the Spidef drop, Shaman's going to be looking at a pretty good situation with the Toxic and everything. That second one, however, does not kill because of the complete form, and he is Zygarde, again, Zygarde, Mewtwo, Deoxys, and Lele against just Arceus and Yveltal, so not looking great for Otto. But he goes out into the Arceus and Ice Beams, goes out into the Lele, and Abrandt can recover here. Interesting play, or Otto can recover here. Interesting play, but I'm assuming that he was just going to sit here and stall out the not only the Psychic Terrain turns, but also kill it with the Toxic. So he can just sit here, recover. Main reason being he wants to get rid of the Psychic Terrain turns, obviously, because he could just kill it right now. He is faster, so and decides to set up the Stealth Rocks last turn and drop to the Psychic. So Yveltal versus the World now. He does have the type advantage, obviously, over a Deoxys attack and a Mewtwo. Mewtwo is Scarf, so we're going to see a Ice Beam, I believe, come out here. Oh, a Toxic. Okay, so Scarf Toxic. Come out on the Yveltal as he was still trying to get rid of that Psychic Terrain, as he finally does. And this time he's going to decide to knock out the Mewtwo, of course, because Mewtwo is Scarfed into Toxic. So we're just going to see that twice as Otto decides to go for... Abrandt decides to go for the Toxic and finish it off with a Sucker Punch on Deoxys. So the Yveltal is going to be able to clean up there after all that. Wasn't looking good for Otto, but of course he did save Yveltal for a couple of Psychic types, which was good on his part. So that is going to bring us into a Game 3, a surprising Game 3 to many, because Abrandt was a heavy favorite going into this battle. So we are going to get into Game 3. Put on slow, switch sides. Hold on, I gotta refresh again because I hit slow, switch sides. Okay, so we are going to go into a Game 3, surprising Game 3, like I said. But Otto has been playing very good, and he team built very well against Abrandt's type. So this time we're going to see a Lele versus Primal Kyogre lead. I'd say a better situation for Abrandt here, considering we know that the Lele is faster than the Kyogre, and we're going to see a Calm Mind from the Lele this time. So something we haven't seen previously, but Otto finally reveals that he is physical Primal Kyogre, something that he hasn't actually used an attack besides Ice Beam yet with his Primal Kyogre. So Abrandt didn't know that. That is why best of threes are so cool for the tournament matches, because it's something that Abrandt has been saving in the back this whole time is Calm Mind Lele, something that he led with probably to catch Otto off guard with for the best of 3. Finally reveals at game 3, and Otto is able to beat it with a physical liquidation Primal Kyogre. So very, very cool. That's why we have best of 3s, so that you can do things like that. As it's going to drop the Lele in one hit. Obviously the Lele would have lived something like a Origin Pulse there at +1, obviously naturally bulky on the Spadef side. So that puts Otto at a great early lead against Abrandt, up 6-5, everyone else on perfect health, obviously. So we're going to see Abrandt go out into his Deoxys attack here. Psychic Train is up, so that Abrandt's going to try to take advantage of that while he can, as we're going to see a double into the Zygarde as he predicts Otto to switch out into something else, but Otto decides to just stay in and go right for the liquidation. Zygarde's going to take over 50%, which is going to let him transform barely, which is nice for him, but obviously taking that damage just kind of stinks. Abrandt finally decides to go out into his decent counter here with Groudon. Of course, he has to be careful of the Earthquake from the Primal Kyogre, considering we know that it is physical, and really the point in physical Primal Kyogre is that it carries the Earthquake specifically for the Primal Groudon. So he has to watch out for that, but he does have the Rain Gun, which is good. He is just going to go for the Precipice Blades here, which does massive 53% to the Slowbro. The Slowbro does Mega Evolve here, though, which is going to let him survive anything that the Groudon wanted to go for, because, of course, Precipice Blades would have been the strongest thing. Abrandt, I assume, predicts the switch out into either Yveltal or Shaman Sky and goes for the Fire Punch, but he decides to just stay in and Mega Evolve. But he does get the burn, which is nice for him. Actually great for him, because he's going to be taking that 6% now, but he can't get Toxic. So unless he Heal Bells, he's going to be burned the whole game, which might just end up being better than being Toxic. So we are going to see him slack off here, just get rid of that damage that Abrandt did. As Abrandt's going to Swords Dance in the Slowbro's face, considering we know that the Slowbro can't Scald it in the sun, obviously, but we do see Slowbro Toxic it, so Abrandt is going to be on limited turns here with his Groudon, but we know that he can Precipice Blades here pretty easily and do a solid, like, let's see, what did it do, 50 against regular, so it definitely would kill the Precipice Blades. But we do see Abrandt go for the Rock Polish, which is an interesting move, because Otto decides to go for the Iron Defense, which is interesting because now Abrandt can't kill with the Precipice Blades, and so his setup really is useless at this point. Obviously he didn't know that the Slowbro is going to have Iron Defense, but again, another reason that these best of 3s are so good, because you can save strats like this for the last round. And Abrandt decides to go for the Precipice Blades here, but Otto just goes for the Slack Off and heals it off. Abrandt knows that he's kind of in a bad situation here. It's still 6-5, and Otto looks like he's in a better position than Abrandt does, so Otto not really sure, or Abrandt not really sure what he's going to do here. He does decide to go out and do the Chansey, gets Toxic, not a big deal, considering the Chansey obviously has Natural Cure, but we can see Chansey spam Seismic Tosses here. Not really too much of a threat. Obviously he can Toxic Stall everything, but he doesn't have a Calm Mind. We know the 4 moves that he has, so we know that he knows that he doesn't have to worry about it actually setting up. If Abrandt can just get into something that can threaten it on the special side, he would be fine. But Otto does decide to just double out, because he knows that he's not really gaining anything from just sitting there.
because the Chansey is just going to end up switching out and getting rid of the Toxic anyways. So he does decide to double out into his Yveltal on the on Abrandt going right for the Stealth Rocks, trying to obviously get pressure on those switches. Abrandt does decide to switch out into his Zygarde here. Now, I don't remember if Natural Cure activates on switch out. I think it does, and we didn't see it, so that's interesting. Does it still say it's poisoned for me? Oh, it doesn't say for me. Okay. Why does it tell me auto stuff? That's weird. But not really sure if the Chansey is not Natural Cure or what. But that's interesting. But anyways, he doubles out into his Zygarde here. Otto goes for the knockoff, gets rid of the leftovers on it, brings it down to about 43%, and then doubles out into his Hydreigon and takes 33 from the 1,000 arrows. We assume that he went out into it to defog, and we're going to see that now as Abrandt can just safely go out into his Chansey, and now we do see that the Chansey is cured of his poison, so it just doesn't say it on here. It only does it in the actual game apparently. But obviously a safe switch in for Abrandt. We know it can eat anything that the Hydreigon has, so he goes back out into his Chansey. He can basically just spam Stealth Rocks or really whatever he wants to. He can Wish here and then Stealth Rock and then heal back up to full and then Wish again and switch out into something else. He has a combination of things he can do because he knows that the Hydreigon really isn't a threat to him. As a Hydreigon goes for a Roost, so we see that he has Roost, Defog, and a Dark move for the Black Hole Eclipse, and then presumably a Dragon move, but we haven't seen a Dragon move come off of it yet. We've only seen the Dark move, so Chansey is going to go for the Stealth Rocks. I would have wished there probably and then gone for the Stealth Rocks, but it doesn't really matter either way. Now Abrandt's going to go for the Wish, and it's kind of looking like a dead-end situation here. Otto does decide to go for the Black Hole Eclipse, presumably expecting maybe the Zygarde to come out or the Groudon to try to catch it off guard and kill it with the Black Hole Eclipse, but Abrandt does just stay in and eats it and then sets up his Stealth Rocks again and then gets the Wish off. So now Otto decides to switch out actually, which is interesting. Instead of trying to get rid of the Stealth Rocks first, he just goes hard into the Yveltal on the Wish from the Chansey and then doubles out again into the Ogre. So kind of interesting there. Chansey does go for the Toxic but misses and then gets the Wish heal. So again, it's kind of looking bad for Abrandt. He's getting minimally haxed, but haxed indeed. And then we know this is physical, and we know that the Liquidation will do a pretty decent chunk to the Chansey. So he does decide to switch out into his Groudon and activate the Desolate Land. He does go for the Liquidation, apparently not predicting the Groudon to switch out, but he does. And then Groudon decides to go for the Fire Punch and do a solid 40%. Would have not dropped, because I think I've been in this situation, would have dropped after the Toxic, I think, to an Earthquake, but he does get another burn on the Fire Punch, which is unfortunate because that lets the Groudon live the Earthquake that he decides to go for. Really, Abrandt could have just Precipice Blade and killed it anyways, but obviously he didn't, and then he gets rewarded in the long run anyways for doing it because he does burn the Primal Kyogre. So Primal Kyogre is going to switch out into the Hydreigon here, and he's going to predict the Precipice Blades a second time, and then the Groudon dies. So looking worse and worse for Abrandt here, down 4-6. Otto is looking a little bit weakened here, but Abrandt also doesn't have Psychic Terrain, keep that in mind, to boost 2 of his threats that he has. So Abrandt does go right out into his Deoxys attack here. We know that it is superpower, so he can just drop the Hydreigon here, which he does. So Abrandt is bringing it back a little bit, obviously, only down 4 now for 4-5, as the as Otto decides to go out into his Shaman Sky. We know it's Scarf, so it will outspeed, so Abrandt decides to go out into his Chansey on the Seed Flare. No drop, but I mean, it's only going to do minimal damage anyway, so the drop really doesn't matter that much whether he gets it or not, but I think it is an 80% chance, so Abrandt's, it's more, if you don't get it, I would say it's more hacks against Otto than if you do get it, just because, I mean, 80% chance is like, it's like missing a Stone Edge if you don't get the drop. I miss Stone Edges basically every time I use it, so it doesn't really surprise me, but Otto does decide to go out into a Slowbro, which is interesting because I don't really know what the Slowbro can do besides Toxic the Chansey, but the Chansey just heals it anyways. So, but Abrandt makes a double Chansey into his Deoxys, and then Dark Pulses the Slowbro and kills it. So it's good that Abrandt, I guess, has been saving all of his moves on his Deoxys, because now Otto really, besides Superpower, didn't know what this Deoxys had, which is putting him in a bad situation because he doesn't really know what to switch into. He doesn't know what he can take with what, so he just has to sack his Slowbro there to the Dark Pulse, and then Otto can go out into his Yveltal, which did reveal Sucker Punch last round, so we know that Abrandt has to fear that, so he goes out into a Zygarde, as, of course, Otto does go for the Sucker Punch. He really doesn't have much of a choice unless he wanted to make it a pretty risky read there, but Otto decides to go out into his Primal Kyogre on the Toxic from the Zygarde, which is good because he's already burned, so he doesn't have to worry about the Toxic. Although, at this point, I think he'd rather be Toxic than burned, just because he's going to be taking damage either way, and he's almost dead, and he'd rather be able to do the full damage with the Liquidation. The Liquidation only does 18, could have killed if he went for the Ice Beam, but he probably predicted to switch into the Chansey, so he does drop to the 1,000 Arrows from the Zygarde. So now, Abrandt's actually looking at a better situation than Otto is, because Otto really only has that Shaman Sky left there to threaten stuff. Of course, this does beat the Zygarde. We know it has Ice Beam, so he can just safely go for that, but Abrandt still has the Chansey this time around. So, Otto goes for the Stealth Rocks, but he's not really going to be able to do anything to threaten the Chansey, so he goes out and does Yveltal. Yveltal is going to take the Toxic, and he can knock off here anything, but I mean, the Zygarde's just gonna, oh no, he roosts, never mind, and Chansey stays in, so he could have had a situation to knock off the Chansey there, which would have helped another one of his Pokemon out pretty heavily, but he decides to double out into his Shaman Sky here, which puts it down to 21%, which means it can't switch in again, so the Shaman Sky has to stay in at this point. The Yveltal's at 35 and Toxic, so that can only switch in once. So now it's looking like these last 3 turns have been really bad for Otto. He could have knocked off the Chansey and then tried to wear that down for the Shaman. The Shaman really was his only, well, the Shaman dies to Scarf Mewtwo anyway, so I think Abrandt was looking really bad at the beginning of this game. But I think really what he was doing was getting himself in a situation where the last few Mons he would have left would be able to beat the last few Mons that Otto had left, and that's kind of the situation that he's in right now. A Scarf Ice Beam from Mewtwo will pretty much clean up everything after this Zygarde dies. He does Healing Wish, though, on the Shaman, which he had obviously not previously revealed, into his Yveltal, which gets rid of the Toxic and puts him just at 75%, and he can drop the Zygarde to a Foul Play. So Tide's turn a little bit. We have to see how this works out for Otto. We don't know exactly what the rest of the Pokemon that Abrandt has can do, so he does go out and do his Chansey, presumably to Toxic the Yveltal again, and that is what he's going to do to try to put that Yveltal on a timer, because Abrandt knows that the Yveltal is really threatening his psychic types here. That is another reason that I think that Otto should have knockoffed instead of roosting against the Chansey, but and then that really wouldn't have worked because of the Chansey seismic toss, which would be so. I think Otto has played this pretty well. I just think that Abrandt played the earlier game better, getting rid of what he needed to get rid of, because now the Yveltal is pretty low, and it's going to allow the Mewtwo to just come out, and it is going to be able to click. It is going to be able to click Ice Beam here, and Mewtwo is going to be able to live that Sucker Punch there. If it had been weakened just a little bit more, Otto could have won this game, but the Ice Beam is going to drop the Yveltal, and then the Arceus is going to come out. It is slower, of course, than the Scarfed Mewtwo, and Mewtwo can just click Ice Beam, drop it down to 20%, freeze it, which doesn't really matter in the long run because the Deoxys would have just come out and finished it off, but obviously still unfortunate. You don't want to end a game in hacks, but it doesn't matter in the long run. Would have just changed the differential to a 1 Deoxys left against a 1 Arceus, which would have been cool, but Mewtwo is cool too, so great battles between the two. Really literally just came down to a weakened Mewtwo. I don't know, let me just calc this roll here real quick because I don't know exactly what the roll was. Let me change to my damage calculator layout and put in, actually let me grab the paste too. It's a little bit HP on the Mewtwo, that's the only reason I'm putting this. Come on. That's the only reason I'm importing it, is because it actually did have a little bit of HP. And then this was a defensive Yveltal, so another thing that would have come into play was if he had been offensive Yveltal, obviously that Sucker Punch 100% would have killed and would have won Otto the game, but of course, I mean, he also wouldn't have been able to live hits as well if, you know, you can't just say that he should have run more attack. So the roll was heavily in Abrandt's favor, obviously ended up working out for him. Otto did have a chance to kill because Stealth Rocks do. Let's see exactly what this roll was. So a 20% chance to kill. So would have been a little bit unfortunate, honestly, if it had come down to that roll and Otto had won based on a roll, but it is Pokemon. But Abrandt does come out on top with the roll there on Sucker Punch at the very end. So either way, great game between the two. Played very well between both of them. Obviously it went down to game 3, and Abrandt, it was, you know, it came down to a roll on Sucker Punch in the end. So very, very, very tight fought game. Great between the two. Both of them did great. It was fun to watch. I only got to catch it a little bit because I was in class, I believe, but both people played great. Kudos to them. Abrandt is going to go on to fight Venge in a title match, potentially twice, spoilers, but that might be a game that we end up covering. I'm not really sure, but either way, I am exhausted. This was a long series to cover. You can probably hear in my voice, I was already not feeling great, so this has been a little bit too much talking for me. But if you enjoyed, hit the subscribe, leave a like, comment down below. If you want to join ARC, there will be an invite down in the description. Hit that and join up, and the mods will point you in the direction of how to get started. So anyways, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have a good one.